We'd like to welcome you all to the special village board meeting, 6 o'clock, Wednesday, March 15th. We have a roll call of officers. Open meeting law compliance check. All please stand for pledge allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll get right to it. Review and approve revised intermunicipal agreement for the provision of ALS paramedic level services. Okay. Everybody read up on this a little bit?
Oh, a little bit. I'm not quite up to speed with the latest.
The latest before tonight, before we got here. Okay, Brad, do you want to highlight what
Background to this?
Yeah.
Okay. Since the meeting the other night, had the opportunity to talk actually today with the village administrator from Fredonia, just to get some clarification. The agreement in my mind before I wasn't exactly sure the scope of what was covered with respect to EMS services, and I think it's clear that the purpose of the document is just to cover the advanced the ALS part of paramedic service, not EMS in general. So the agreement draft that we had the other night kind of referenced it, more in general, and it kind of caused, I think, a little bit of confusion just from looking at the agreement. So not having the history of where this got to this point in time, I just thought it was important to get up to speed to understand what the intent of this document is. So I was able to confirm that with Chris Jenkins from Fredonia. So a lot of this was to clarify again that it's only at the paramedic level what's being contracted. So the village of Belgium still has and maintains its EMS level service. I believe it's county dispatch that will decide on an incident basis what's required, as far as if it requires a paramedic level. So a lot of it was done to clean that part up, to make sure it just didn't reference EMS services in general. There's some points that were discussed the other night, and I'll refer to some specific sections that I think it's important that the board decides, and understands, what's being recommended here. As far as the budget goes, it's contemplated that for the first 3 years, based on the grant that's available through the county, that there's not going to be a contributing component by any of the participating municipalities during the first 3 years. And that's what we talked about the other night. At 2026 is when the contributions, presumably, unless something changes between now and then, but that's what this agreement calls for, that's when that would kick in. So 2025 and the 25 and the budget, proposal, and payment would commence invoice by the end of 2025 December, and then the payment would be due. And I talked to the village administrator about this. It'd be like no later than March 31st, or end of first quarter, basically that would be paid based on the budget for that given year. So I just want to clarify that the parties, the municipalities, do not anticipate there being any contribution during the initial 3 years of this agreement. All right, moving on. So, at the last meeting, and I didn't run the scenario, that I'm not sure if the board wants to hear. Like, I'm not sure the actual fiscal impact of the 3 different formulas to derive. That's, I think, was proposed by the town of Fredonia, I believe. Was that?
Yes, correct.
So my legal review didn't include, trying to get a scenario, how to factor that in. It's something you may want to, consider if that formula, the calculations are okay with the Village of Belgium. But that's what's, being proposed right now, not just based on, on population census. I did clarify that the service calls which is the first formula, is based on paramedic level service calls. We're not just talking about EMS calls in general, that it's based on service calls related to this agreement. I think that's what I assume would be contemplated.
It's still EMS though. I mean, it's still ambulance service in general. Because it's still providing the ambulance, and the paramedic is still coming with the ambulance, whether they're needed or not. So concerned about just labeling it as paramedic level because you're getting a full ambulance from us.
Yeah,
Although
but
we're paying separately for the ambulance.
You're not gonna be though after this is done.
Oh, we are now.
No.
Correct.
Okay.
No, that has to be-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not, right, you're not, no,
Goes away in January.
that 22,000, right, right.
so are you referring to just, so for tracking calls would be, again, they're coming through the county through dispatch, correct? So if we're tracking, and again, the type of call volume is, again, it's for discussion of the board. I interpret it to mean that, for what's required to contribute for this, it would be for, again, it wouldn't matter if Belgium's ambulance was called. Oh, squad, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're at ambulance. We don't.
So okay, so everything is,
Transported by Fredonia.
okay,
They are dispatched for every rescue call that we have. Fredonia is also.
Well,
So,
Well,
and.
not yet.
Well, not, yeah, Fort does some on the east side, but yes.
Clarified.
okay.
But our ambulance fees that we're paying now are based on call volume of all the calls. So I think that it is reasonable to continue doing that, not to just do paramedic.
Right.
Because that's been the basis in the past.
Right,
What do you mean?
So with that clarification, it sounds
What I
like,
mean is that it's reasonable for the call volume to be based on all the calls, not just
Yeah.
paramedic.
that's not, does that include fire or that just for
No,
for
it's
EMS?
just-
So I mean, the agreement is EMS.
yeah,
Yeah, so all,
But,
okay.
yeah.
And is it just with the background with the other communities, the other municipalities, they're all basically running it then through the village, is that? I'm just curious how that call volume would work.
Town of Fredonia, partial town of Fredonia is not because it's run by Wabica, and Wabica has their own ambulance, transporting ambulance at this time. So their call volume would be only the paramedic intercept that we would be providing them. They're gonna be a little bit different in service lines that we're gonna provide them. They would still do their transports if they can staff an ambulance. But we would provide a paramedic to go with them on those. Definitely ones, twos, or threes when they require it based on dispatch telling us that we need to go. So yeah, that might throw a little bit of a wrench in it when it comes to call volume, like we might be only transporting 30%, or we might only be going on 30% of their calls.
right,
With the Wabica Fire Department in town of Fredonia here.
And Brad, it does clarify that in the end of that paragraph. It says that the call volume does not include transport or contract intercept calls for municipalities. For calls outside the municipalities. Or if it's assigned, regardless,
That,
basically it's,
but that's in there so that if we end up going to Random Lake,
okay.
if we feel, or if I feel that we have enough bandwidth to say that we can extend out the Random Lake with our paramedic, that's not part of this stuff, that's above and beyond, that's
right,
another avenue for us to get more revenue, so that these numbers that we're
That will
paying
go
here, that
Will
will
go
go down.
right,
So presumably though, the call volume that you're going to use is going to be based on the calls that you guys actually come out to. If
And we
for some
can-
reason you're busy and we have to bring in Fort or someone else, you're not going to be including that in the call
It's
volume.
not part of this, correct?
Right,
So the wording should reflect that it's the call volume based on Fredonia's response to within the municipality.
And that's any emergency response, not for Fredonia.
EMS
No,
service,
EMS
yeah,
service.
fire.
Okay. Sounds like that's something, you know, again, the plan would be after tonight's meeting, assume you give me some direction or approve a document, I would make more changes, edits to what you advise or what you direct me to do. Then I would send it to the village administrator for Fredonia, that you would share with the other municipalities.
yeah,
All right, so I'll make that clarification and change that. Insofar as the calculation, the other night we talked about, you know, some sort of limit on a budget increase that if you exceed a certain amount or reaches a certain amount, that it would require the village, the board approval here. So this document does, if an increase about 5% is recommended by the EMS chief and is conditionally approved by the village of Fredonia Board of Trustees, then such increase to be adopted will require each of the contracting municipalities to also approve the proposed budget increase. Now, I know there was discussion the other night between possibly 3 or 4 of the municipalities. My recommendation is when it comes to anything that would be above increase, that you wouldn't be delegating that authority to another body, that's something you guys would want to approve specifically. So the language is to, you know, that ultimately, if it goes above the 5%, and if it's above 5% for budget on an annual basis, you guys would have to approve it.
right.
Any discussion on that, any questions?
In your previous red line version, the one that was sent out this afternoon prior to this one, you had remarked about whether we wanted to maintain that 5% based on levy limits. Are you?
So my comment, so I had a comment in the earlier draft where, you know, 5% is the number that was discussed the other night. I know Vicky was commenting too, you're limited by, you know, the levy, you can't just increase by 5%. So if there is a increase of rate of 5% or greater, it's gonna affect your budget, and it's gonna have to, you know, unless the state of Wisconsin does some better things for local municipalities, you know, then it would, you know, affect the budget that way. So just to make sure you understand that. So, you know, I think, you know,
Anything.
Vicky had do the lower number we discussed before, and then it started with the 5%, but I think that's up to the board to decide.
This is still based on salaries.
Oh, right,
My budget stays very, very
the same,
minimal,
okay,
it's kind of stable, except for salaries.
Right.
It's gonna be the factor.
that's gonna be the factor.
So to give you a reference point, if you look at the spreadsheet up there, the levy limit over the course of the last years, it's based on net new construction plus a small percentage. So if you look, you can see from 2019 or whatever the first year is, 2020, that was a smaller increase. We must have not had as much of a levy limit increase that year. But most years it's in the, you know, this last year was $20,000.
Right,
So if we're to assume that our portion of this is going to be around $100,000, then a 5% increase would be $5,000.
oh,
So it would be within our levy limit at
Okay.
5% most years. So that's the perspective.
All right. all right,
So the 5% is still a reasonable
I think-
percentage.
I think
Okay, that's
it's-
where,
that's enough
that's
to
what I just
exceed
wanted to,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I'd like to, you know, like they pointed out, Fredonia is also going to be paying a big
Right,
portion of
right.
this. So obviously their trustees presumably are going to be trying to keep budget
As-
low
as-
possible
right.
also.
They're frugal.
well, you got a lot of Luxembourgers here, so they're pretty frugal too, tell you. Who you know?
So the next item under the financing part is the capital improvements or capital equipment. And it's my understanding, talking to Chris, that the 60,000, there was for year one is the purchase of the vehicle. That's really the only capital improvement that's contemplated at this time.
Okay, well, yeah, and what we're looking at, I think the number we're going to that Kozaki County with would be around the $120,000 mark. It's a $50,000 thing for a vehicle, and if we don't get it, I'm okay with it. We asked for we also have on that list a $38,000 new DPIV unit. To have a second one in the firehouse, so if the first one's gone, we have a second.
Second one, right,
And it's got the same capabilities that the current one has.
Right.
So those are the big ticket items. The rest of it is all just small equipment, small equipment. It's the new medications, the state for the medications and all that stuff.
Yeah. Which is gonna be like a one-time thing.
Correct.
So again, some of the language you have in front of you refers to whether you want, a capital improvement plan, like a 5-year or 10-year plan. It's something that, again, if it's being proposed, so if applicable, the chief can make an annual recommendation to municipalities as to a 5-year and or a 10-year capital improvement plan. It is carved out where, again, for capital improvements, that those should be approved individually, by each municipality. And then, presumably because they're capital improvements, there's going to be some sort of schedule as to how that gets funded, and that goes into a separate account.
Right.
Those capital improvements are that you're contributing towards that for this service that will be for equipment or,
Right.
capital improvements could be more than equipment.
Right.
I mean, like, the station, but there's nothing.
Brand new.
Yeah, that's fine.
You ain't getting nothing for another 40s.
If that.
Lucky.
So ideally, Fredonia would propose a 5 or 10-year capital plan, and it
Right.
will work similar to our capital plan works now.
Right.
Where they determined by 2030, they wanted to buy a new intercept vehicle.
Right,
And they're estimating it's gonna be 75,000. So each municipality would be saving every year what they needed to get
to
there.
get to that amount.
As long as that plan doesn't change, boards would have to reapprove.
Right,
And the next, so every 5 years or whatever, they update the plan.
right.
That would require a new. Is that the way that's worded? That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
I'm good with the language in that.
I like it. Me too.
Mhm.
And I already touched on this, the payment of the budget expenses, again, they're gonna be invoiced. The payments won't start until the January 1st, 2026 year. It's gonna be invoiced by December 1st. 2025, it's, yeah. it's gonna be 1,000.
225,
Yeah.
what is that?
It's quite a few years out.
Well, we don't have to pay for another 10 cents.
Don't worry about
I'll
it.
make that change. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as my revision that.
So based on the conversation we had, is there anything in here that the board is not understanding or not in agreement to? I mean, most of it's just some language change.
Yeah.
Touched on any of the major stuff that we were looking to add since Monday.
Nope.
Everything looks
any
good to me.
input regarding
I think it looks
the
good.
changes? So Brad, where are we, I mean, just to kind of wrap it up, where are we at as far as what we need to change to approve?
So if, subject to what the discussion for changing the calls, how calls are tracked, the
Right.
call volume, I can make that change in here. But, pursuant to what's discussed tonight based on this draft, if you approve that, I'll make that change
And then,
and then forward it to Chris at the Village of Fredonia. And then he will circulate that among the other municipalities, and hopefully we'll have
Yeah.
soon an agreement that everyone's on the same page.
All right, would the board be comfortable with a conditional approval tonight?
yes,
Yes, I
absolutely.
would.
Yeah,
All right,
I-
would like to make a motion.
I will. I'll make a motion that we approve this intermunicipal agreement on condition of the changes that we talked about being made in there, and then it be forwarded on to where it needs to go.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion?
Rosie T.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And thank you, everyone.
I make, I make a motion
What's the
to
next
adjourn.
time?
Second.
Can't do that, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. I gotta run.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Good additions,
And Brian,
thank you.
thanks for coming out again. guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. Make sure that everyone's understanding.
Yeah.
The service levels and
We adjourn,
you two.
Peter.
There was a motion.
I
and
make
second.
a motion.
Oh, I motion to adjourn.
I second it. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.